The bathroom is one of the most dangerous rooms of the house, especially for somebody suffering from Alzheimer's disease or some other form of dementia. Possible hazards include suffering shock or electrocution from electrical appliances and outlets, falling or slipping on hard tiles or slick floors, being bruised from hard surfaces such as countertops and sinks, being cut from sharp objects including glass, mirrors, razors, and scissors, being burned with curling irons and hair dryers, or being scalded with hot water, and in rarer and even more tragic cases, drowning in inadequately attended bathtubs. In addition to the potential for bodily injury, cognitively impaired individuals can cause property damage by absent-minded and careless behavior. For example, forgetting to turn off a running faucet, flushing inappropriate items down the toilet, dropping or mishandling appliances or using them incorrectly, wrenching fixtures such as towel racks and toilet paper holders from cabinets and walls, whether by mistaking them for handrails or grab bars or simply grasping out at them in desperation during an accident or fall. So I'm going to survey a few of these dangers, and perhaps more importantly, I'll suggest a checklist of changes that caretakers can make in order to improve the care environment and promote safety. In this video then, we'll take a look at bathroom, long-term care, and safety modifications. First of all, let me start with the usual disclaimers. What specific changes are going to benefit you and your loved one are going to be very dependent on individual factors and circumstantial factors. These factors are going to include things like your loved one's needs, your loved one's condition, and also the particulars of the care environment. None of the interventions we're going to survey is a substitute for vigilance. Now, I anticipate going into similar checklists for other rooms of the house, but I decided to start with the bathroom for three main reasons. Number one, the bathroom is one of the most dangerous rooms in the house. Number two, unlike other also dangerous rooms, like maybe the garage, the attic, maybe a basement, it's likely that you and the Alzheimer's sufferer are going to be in the bathroom multiple times a day. And number three, the bathroom has peculiar privacy concerns that go along with it. So for most of the person's life, they're going to be used to having privacy in the bathroom, and when there's a cognitive impairment, that can be a recipe for disaster. I'm going to divide my suggestions into three main categories. Firstly, I'm going to look at interventions that are fairly easy to perform. Most of these also are going to involve little to no cost. Secondly, we'll look at interventions that are a little more resource intensive, whether the resources are time and energy, skill, or money. Thirdly, we'll take a brief look at some of the more elaborate and costly alterations that some people consider doing or having done for Alzheimer's proofing or just for long-term care applications in general. Now, in addition to those three difficulty levels, there's also a series of distinctions that's going to cut across each of the three difficulty levels. What is the stage of the dementia? For the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to assume a simple three-stage division. Early stage, middle stage, and late stage, depending on whether the impairment is in a very mild form, whether it's in a very severe form, or whether it's somewhere in between. Along the way, other conversations may arise, and we'll deal with those in turn. So we're going to start with easy interventions. As a matter of fact, many of these tips are going to apply to senior care applications regardless of whether or not there's a cognitive impairment involved. In fact, some of the recommendations are so generalized that they may apply to anybody's bathroom whatsoever. So for example, number one, declutter the bathroom. Now this is going to include decluttering countertops because when a countertop is cluttered, it can be confusing for the Alzheimer's sufferer, and it's also a bit dysfunctional. You're going to want to declutter the floor and walking area because a cluttered bathroom can increase the risk of falls and tripping. So number two, make sure you pick up obvious trash, cords that might be stretched across the ground. But also number three, relocate clothes piles, hampers, and anything else that will impede travel. Number four, consider relocating pills and other pharmaceuticals. Now there's two reasons for this. The first reason is that access control will become important when we move into the middle stages of Alzheimer's disease. So these first easy tips can apply to people who are in early stage dementia, or indeed in the case of moving pharmaceuticals, they can apply to anybody whatsoever because Number two, pharmaceuticals are not recommended to be stored in the bathroom. It's somewhat unfortunate that the medicine cabinet has that name. It isn't an ideal space to store your pills. Part of the reason for this is that water in the bathroom from faucets and showers raises the humidity level, and that can adversely affect the potency of various pills that you store. Number five, you might encourage your loved one to switch to electric shavers and razors as opposed to blades or cartridges, for the obvious reason that blades and cartridges have an escalated risk of cuts. Electrical appliances pose their own dangers, and we'll mention more about that in just a moment. Number six, turn down the temperature on your water heater, or I should say, make sure that the temperature on the water heater is not too high. Many resources online will suggest a temperature of 120 degrees, no more than 125 degrees. Relatedly, number seven, cover exposed pipes. The hot water pipe can get very hot and can also cause burns, but even the cold water pipe can sweat and cause dripping, which might be a hazard. Number eight, think about the potential dangers posed by things that might be unique to your situation. Is there a radiator in the bathroom? Are there heat lamps? Are there any other pieces of furniture or challenges that arise? In my dad's case, there was a laundry chute, and we had to basically close that off so he didn't put objects down into it. Other early interventions will have a nominal cost associated with them. So for instance, number nine, invest in some durable and preferably machine washable non-skid rugs. This is one that you have to be very careful about in older age, and sometimes with cognitive impairments, people shuffle their feet. If the rug is going to be a problem for somebody who may shuffle, you may have to get a lower profile rug. Consider getting socks that have non-skid pads on the sock. Try to do something to minimize the risk of slipping and falling. Relatedly, number 10, you're going to want non-slip mats for inside the shower basin or the bathtub. And number 11, I'll add that if you have an affinity for herbs, you might also consider interventions that would include herbs. So for instance, you might get some kind of an atomizer. You might invest in shampoos and soaps that have certain herbal elements to them. One very common brain-friendly constituent would be rosemary. And I have many other videos that deal with herbs and herbal interventions. As we move into middle stage, there are a few other things that you might want to consider as well. One of the key factors in middle stage is going to be access control. So you're going to want to access control cleansers and other chemicals, electrical appliances and other devices, curling irons, electric toothbrushes, hair dryers, shavers, and other things that might find their way into the bathroom. Additionally, if you haven't already relocated or access controlled medications, you're going to want to do so by middle stage. Razors and other bladed instruments, including scissors, obviously you're also going to want to restrict access to. But beside these manifestly dangerous items, it's sometimes also a good idea in middle stage to restrict access to things like toilet paper and paper towels. And this is especially true if your loved one has a habit of using too many or flushing too much down the toilet. Similar considerations might be brought about a trash can or about a toothbrush. It seems a bit odd, but we're talking about somebody who has cognitive impairment. There are stories of loved ones using the trash can as a toilet. Also, in my dad's case, he wasn't above using his own toothbrush as a scouring implement. So for access control, the primary thing here might be removing the items from the bathroom and placing them into another room where you can more easily observe what the Alzheimer sufferer is doing and make sure that they don't get into these things. You might also think about things like cabinet locks. The problem there is, apart from hiring a professional locksmith and seriously putting the cabinet under lock and key, the latches that are designed for childproofing scenarios really aren't designed to be in a bathroom situation where the person might be in the bathroom in privacy for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, a half an hour, or whatever it is. They could spend the entire time in the bathroom trying to get at whatever's inside the cabinet. So those locks and latches just buy time, but they don't really stand alone as foolproof interventions. So the best access control for many people is simply going to be to remove those items that pose a danger. On a similar wavelength, though, you might include things like outlet covers. It's also probably going to be a good idea to minimize decorations, particularly if the decorations are going to be dangerous, maybe made of glass or have some kind of breakability to them, artificial fruit, or something that you think your loved one might actually put into their mouth, choke on, or attempt to eat. You're also going to want to think about case-specific challenges. So maybe your shower curtains are not being used correctly. Maybe your loved one doesn't fan them out correctly and you're getting water damage onto the floor, or possibly they have a lot of hair that's going down the drain and you want to invest in drain screens. There could be any of a number of other specialty items that you look at in middle stage. And here also you might consider shampoo and conditioner combinations to make it easier on your loved ones so they don't have to remember multiple bottles, or even body and hair wash combinations so that they have a one-stop shop and they don't have to worry about different soaps for different parts of the body. In some cases, you will run into additional challenges, particularly as you move into middle stage. And these could be things like your loved one hiding objects. You might find objects that don't even belong in the bathroom hidden away inside of bathroom cabinets, behind toilets, and other things like this. Similarly, number two, if inappropriate appliances are brought in, so maybe a clothes iron ends up in there, or something else, who knows what it could be, you're going to want to make sure that those also get access controlled and that you're aware of them. Number three, in terms of specialty considerations, you're also going to want to bear in mind that there will be a difference in terms of approach depending on whether or not this is your bathroom or whether you're taking care of your loved one in his or her bathroom. The difference is going to be if you're bringing your loved one into your home, presumably you have a pretty good idea of the condition of your bathroom. But if you're venturing into your loved one's home, that home could be in any state of repair or disrepair. In the case of my grandma's house, for example, there was a leaky toilet that was intermittent that we didn't discover until we were in the house for a longer period of time. So whenever you first go into a care environment that's not your own home, inspect the place for hidden items, inspect for water damage, inspect for leakage, especially in a bathroom situation. But also, if you can, test the outlets, make sure that you have good circuitry, ground fault circuit interrupters, and things like that that are going to provide some protection against shock and electrocution. Finally, there are a few easy interventions that might also apply in late stage. These are going to be things like investing in waterless hair cleaning products. There are some hair shampoos that don't require water to be rinsed that can be used for people who are non-ambulatory. Or number two, something like a shower bench to be able to help you to bathe your loved one in a home care setting. Now, as we move into intermediate considerations, these are going to be ones that are more intensive, more resource intensive. They're going to require more specialty knowledge and a little bit more in terms of an investment. Now, early interventions might include things like the ground fault circuit interrupter outlets that we just briefly mentioned. So if you're going into your loved one's house, maybe it hasn't been updated in decades, or you know that your own bathroom doesn't have ground fault circuit interrupters, probably going to be a good idea to update the bathroom outlets so that they do have that minimal protection. Second type of intervention that's going to be a little more involved is things like removing the locks from the doors. A person with Alzheimer's disease can't be counted on not to accidentally or purposely lock the door when it's shut, preventing you from getting in the event of an emergency, or in the event that you think that they're doing something in the bathroom that could pose a danger to them. It's probably going to be a good idea, number one, either to maintain a key to the door, and some bathroom doors can be opened with a simple screwdriver, but in some cases, even just a matter of a few seconds can mean the difference between life and death, and so you might find it advantageous to simply remove the locking hardware from the door altogether so that it's not even possible to lock the door. It's probably not going to be advisable to leave an open hole where the doorknob used to be, so you're probably going to be looking at investing in non-locking door hardware that you're then going to swap out, and if that's beyond you, you might want to involve a handyman, a locksmith, or somebody who can do that job. Now, as we move into middle stage Alzheimer's, more intermediate interventions include things like removing other dangerous things. Now, this could be glass. Maybe there's a mirror hanging on the wall and you're afraid that it might fall or be pulled down. In my dad's case, there was a glass moving shower door that he would sort of fall against, and so it might be a good idea if you have something like that to remove it. You might be getting into a more involved carpentry or home improvement project, and if it's beyond your skills to do that, seek out the services of a professional. Also in the intermediate category are going to be more sophisticated interventions like cabinet latches, low light sensors or motion sensing lights so that the light switch doesn't have to be thrown as you move into the bathroom, and even replacing an exhaust fan with a quieter version. Sometimes that can help in two ways. A person with Alzheimer's disease might become agitated at the high noise that's created by some bathroom exhaust fans, and number two, you can't hear as well what's going on in the bathroom. We get into a delicate space where we talk about privacy and that, but the reality is you're going to want to know what's going on in the bathroom in order to be available to your loved one in the event that they need you. If a faucet doesn't have clearly labeled hot and cold, it might be a good idea to replace the faucet with one that maybe has a bright red icon for the hot, but there you're talking about a plumbing job. So if you don't have expertise in swapping a faucet out, or if you're not confident in your ability to follow a YouTube video doing that, then you might want to hire a professional. Additionally, as you get into middle stage, and indeed as a person advances in age, they may require certain mobility aids. Here we're talking things like grab bars and handrails. But grab bars and handrails are not as simple as simply sticking a post onto the wall. They've got to be well secured enough so that they don't get wrenched from the wall. So there you're talking about investing not only in the hardware, but also making sure you have the know-how to install them correctly, or hiring a professional. Finally, in mid to late stage, you might consider things like swapping the shower head out with some kind of a shower wand, and replacing or changing drain hardware if it's hard to operate. Now, to round things out, as we go into hard interventions, there are a few hard interventions that might be appropriate in early, middle, and late stage Alzheimer's disease. And of course, by hard interventions, we mean ones that are going to require quite a bit more in terms of know-how than any of the ones we've surveyed so far. And also, in some cases, that's going to mean that there's also a higher monetary commitment as well. So what's an example of this? Well, in early stage, let's say you first venture into mom or dad's house or grandma's house, and you notice that there's water damage on the wall. You might then be faced with a project like replacing wallboard, correcting plumbing issues that are behind the walls, maybe causing that leak. So if you're not confident in your ability to replace moldy wallboard, or if you don't have the plumbing know-how to fix whatever's going on behind the wall, that is going to be a more substantial investment. There may also be tripping hazards like broken or loose tiles on the ground. So sometimes there could be linoleum tiles that are peeling up. And in any of these cases, to fix the flooring may be an involved home improvement or handyman project. Besides plumbing issues, a bathroom could also have any of a number of electrical issues as well, and when you have electricity and water together, that combination can be extremely dangerous. Other more specialized interventions may be things like raising or lowering a light switch. If your loved one is wheelchair bound, maybe the light switch is up too high. In middle stage, there are other interventions that might also be warranted or advisable. So for example, in my dad's case, one of the sinks in the house didn't have an overflow drain. An overflow drain is a little hole on the sink basin that allows water to flow out if the water level rises too high. It's not simply about punching a hole in the sink basin. The plumbing has to be in place in order to catch the water and direct it to the appropriate place. This kind of a sink might be a good idea to install if you don't have one already, particularly if you have a problem with your loved one forgetting to turn off the faucet, or closing the drain and forgetting to open it again, or putting something down into the drain that clogs it up. That could be a rag or a towel. It could be stuffing Kleenex down there. With Alzheimer's disease, you never know. An intervention that's related to this might be a motion sensing faucet. A faucet that when you wave your hand in front of it, it turns on, theoretically, and then when you move your hand away, the thing turns off, and so your loved one does not have to remember to manually turn the faucet off. But this intervention is going to be somewhat complicated. Not only do you have the plumbing to worry about, but you also have the electricity. Related to the motion sensing faucet might be something like an auto flush toilet. Another consideration is going to be the temperature of the bathroom. In the case of my dad, he would just take the thermostat and crank it up 80 degrees, 90 degrees. There are a number of heating and cooling options. For example, central air, where you have a register in the bathroom. The register can potentially pose a tripping hazard, can pose a problem if your loved one drops or places things into the register. Some other heating and cooling options you often encounter in bathrooms might be radiators, particularly hot water pipe radiators. There may be electrical radiators, but those are going to pose special problems. Any radiator could pose problems in terms of navigating around it, possibly also in terms of placing things on top of it if it gets hot. There could be issues with bumping into or touching the radiator. Another possibility for heating in the bathroom would be heat lamps. Sometimes these can be installed into the ceiling. The heat lamps have to be bathroom rated. They obviously have to be able to function in a high moisture environment. Heat lamps are not designed to be left on for long periods of time, so it might be good to have a timer installed. Additionally, some heat lamps might generate noise, and as with several of the interventions we've been discussing, they have to be installed properly, and ventilation might also be something you have to concern yourself with. A final possibility would be in-floor heating. Probably the most significant negative on this is going to be the cost of installation. But in addition to that, usually the floor height is going to have to be increased slightly to make room for the hardware, and this can be a tripping hazard. On the plus side, many of these are energy efficient and they don't generate noise. Additional, more expensive interventions might include widening a doorway to make room for a wheelchair, and converting a regular bathtub into a walk-in bathtub or a walk-in shower. But many of these interventions can cost a significant amount of money. Walk-in bathtubs, for example, can run many thousands of dollars. Sometimes the line blurs between middle and late stage in some of these interventions. As you care for your loved ones, some of these may become more pressing issues for you, but in very late stage, mobility is going to become a real issue. There are mobility aids that can be used in the bathroom. There are bathroom lifts that can help you lift your loved one in and out of a bathtub, for example, but these are significant pieces of hardware and have a significant cost. Let me conclude by simply saying a few words about when it might be time to consider a nursing home. Now, I have an entire video on this question, and I don't want to repeat every point here. But I think it's worth mentioning because some of the interventions that I just listed are very expensive. Whether or not your loved one is going to have to be segued into a nursing home environment is going to depend on a number of factors. And these factors are going to be very personal to you, your loved one, and the situation. So for example, you're going to have to consider your loved one's overall health, your loved one's behaviors, the particulars of your loved one's affliction. You're also going to want to consider your overall health and your availability. And then finally, you're going to have to consider the amount of resources that you have available, both in terms of time, energy, and money. For a more thorough investigation of these, please see the other video. Essentially though, in some care applications, you may find that you're having to turn your house or your loved one's house into a nursing home or even into a hospital. For some people, and in some situations, this might be feasible. But for others, it's going to be difficult, if not practically impossible. As we have seen, long-term care and safety interventions run the gamut. Some of them are low cost and very simple. And some can be very costly and complex. Only you can make the determination of what is doable in your family's case. For some people and in some situations, like as what happened with my dad, the modifications become so numerous and so expensive that it's no longer possible to use the home as the care environment. In the end, in my dad's case, we opted to go with a long-term care environment because the interventions necessary at the house level were simply infeasible for us. Now, it's a hard decision, and it's not without negatives on both sides of the fence. But just know that it is the ambition of this channel to help families remain caregivers for as long as they are willing and able to do so. And if you found something of use in this video, I ask that you like it. And if you'd like to see similar videos about other rooms of the house, I invite you to check back, subscribe to the channel, and even click the notification bell if you'd like to be alerted to that content as it becomes available. I thank you so much for joining me today, and I wish you well in your bathroom modification efforts. Thank you so much.